and welcome to this episode of Concise Conversations featuring Holger Weiss. Holger is the current founder and CEO of Autolabs. It's a company that uses AI-assisted voice tools to help professional drivers. We talked to Holger about his entire career progression, which started off as a standard graduate trainee, but then he moved into the world of startups with Gate 5. He did that for a few years and then they were acquired by Nokia, so he went into the world of the corporate world. He enjoyed that, he learned a lot from that, but then he wanted to get back into startups, so then he joined Opeo. Opeo did well for a few years, but again, it did so well that it was acquired by another corporate, Panasonic. We talk about how he enjoyed that, and then now, finally, eventually ending back where he started, in startups, with his new venture, Autolabs. And finally, after we talk to him about all that, we get to know him a little bit better with the Concise Conversations First 8 questions. Hi Holger, thanks for joining us on this episode of Concise Conversations.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Thanks, Bob. It's always good to see you.
So I thought you've had quite a varied and interesting career, but I'd like to start right at the beginning where it didn't really feel like in your first sort of jobs that you were on any particular path towards startups. Can you tell us, how were you, and if you weren't, how did you get into that?
How did you find that out?
Well, I've seen some interviews, I've looked at your LinkedIn.
Social media, you need to be so careful what you share. No, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail. And my wife is still joking that I ended up one day in running tech startups for almost 20 years now, because I'm so not of a tech guy originally. So there was the early days of the internet. I was definitely not the first one with a PC and a browser on. The early days of mobile phones, I was definitely not the first one with a mobile phone, and so on. No, it just happened. I mean, I studied economics, and that was in the 90s, and in the late 90s, I actually decided for good reasons to join the media industry.
Yeah.
And there was a very big printing house in Hamburg, Germany, Axel Springer, which is today not a printing house but a digital internet company, if you want so. So they did the transformation, and that was right before. And I was really of the impression that I am made for a corporate career.
Right.
And somehow I started it, and I figured out probably not. And no, the story is quickly told. I mean, it was really the opportunity that a couple of my friends were already joining tech startups, first internet bubble. Right at that time, it was travel booking and banking and communities, etc. Some did very well, others not so well, but I thought it's a good experience. And so I left the corporate world and joined the startup world. I'm still here. I mean, there are from time to time, every 7, 8, 10 years, I'm joining back the corporate, because lucky enough in my life, I managed to work for two companies, or to help to build two companies that we also managed to sell.
I mean, you're good at startups, and the problem with that is you get acquired by big companies, and then you've got to work with them for a bit.
Yeah, the problem with startups is not that they got acquired, that so little got acquired, and if you're then lucky, then. Anyway, yeah, no, it's true. So that brought me to become a tech entrepreneur.
And did you start in Berlin with the founding of the companies, or were you in another part of Germany?
No. I mean, I was when I joined the media industry, I was still in Hamburg, as I said, and then I moved over to Berlin, originally also for Axel Springer, for a local project here, and then things developed, and the first company was a company named Gate 5.
Yeah.
Gate 5 was a very early innovator, if you want so, in the area of mapping and routing and GPS satellite navigation and so on.
Yeah, we had Armin Fendrick on one of our
Oh,
a
yeah,
couple of episodes ago. So he was at Gate
yeah,
5 as well. So it's,
right. Yeah, Armin joined my team in 2005, I think, and he was that was. I mean, Armin is a perfect example how you then evolve as a startup. At a certain point of time, we simply needed more people who understand what they do.
yeah,
And that was Armin.
yeah,
Armin was our first head of sales, and he did a great job there.
yeah. Because I heard like in one of your other interviews, like you didn't really plan on moving and staying in Berlin, but it kind of captured you somehow. Is that?
Yeah, yeah. I was here for just 3 months, and then at the time I met my 2 days wife. So I fell in love for Berlin and in
Yeah.
Berlin. So which was a good reason to stay here. And now almost 22 years I'm here, with the interruption of 2 years while I was in Hong
Oh,
Kong.
cool.
So I lived for 2 years in Hong Kong. Yeah.
So I found like the story of Gate 5 quite interesting as well, because from what I gather, when you started that, you weren't exactly sure what you were going to sell. You just had a good technology, and then it kind of went from there, which is kind of feels like a parallel in a lot of your decisions as you go on. You know you want to do something, but you don't exactly know what, and then you get out there and it then becomes something.
Yeah, but isn't that a little bit how entrepreneurial life actually is? I mean, it's a mixture of being dedicated and naive.
Yeah,
Because I mean, if you would know how hard it is and where to head to, I mean, if you choose a safe career, then you end up probably with the German Post or
yeah,
something like that, right? But even in our days, working for very big companies is anything but safe. But of course, I mean, there's a certain level of risk. And yes, I mean it's true. I mean, as said, I mean there probably was a early plan on making a management
yeah,
corporate career, and I told you what happened to
yeah.
that plan. And then, yeah, I also, I mean, I mean, I need to, or I have to admit, I somehow got addicted to this type of startup company
Yeah.
building, and so yeah, I'm with it,
So
still with it.
can you tell me a little bit about what Gate 5 was? It was a mapping company originally, and then it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the original founder. I always say I'm a founding generation because I joined right after the company was set up, and I was with this company almost 9 years from the beginning through all the difficult years, 9/11, all of that we went through, and eventually managed to sell it in a very big exit, and then stayed for another 2 years, 3 years almost, with the acquiring company, which was Nokia at the time. And Gate 5 actually was founded by three guys. One joined a little bit later. Really from, I would say, from the nerd background, right? These guys were working in a project that was called at the time, end of the 90s, TerraVision. TerraVision was a real-time map rendering. A renderer is this software program that makes visual maps out of digital geo information. So if you today on Google Maps or wherever, or on your TomTom, and you're zooming in and out, that's what the renderer is doing. And TerraVision was a project made for Deutsche Telekom when they went public in 2000, I think, in Frankfurt and in New York, and they animated a flight, real-time flight from outer space on Frankfurt, and then you could see. Or, I mean, today everyone has it on its computer, and it's called Google Maps, and or Apple Maps or Here Maps. I mean, Here is actually the legacy that was built out of Gate 5 originally, and at another acquisition Nokia did then at the time. But while at the time it was a super complex thing, right? So you needed huge machines. There was no cloud computing, and to do this in real time, the uh, the um, the processor and the memory you needed and the power was just insane to do this, right? So, and this company actually had it, and then the original founders of Gate 5 took it and said that's great technology, and somehow maps will rule our life and also the mobile life and the internet and what the internet will become. And another group from that same project went over to the US and founded a company called Keyhole. So there was Gate 5 and Keyhole, two mapping companies originated from this project, TerraVision. So Gate 5 was then our company, and we built it to what it then became,
Yeah.
Nokia Maps, sold the company to Nokia. Nokia did another acquisition, Navtech, merged it and built what is today Here Technology. Here Technologies is a, I think, 6,000 people company, globally leading in car navigation and so on. But Keyhole was actually the foundation for
Right.
Google Maps, because Keyhole was the company that Google acquired for their first mapping activity. So somehow Google Maps originated a little bit also from Berlin, because TerraVision was a project from Berlin. So that's the story. But as I said, I joined the company later, so I only tell this story as a nice fireside chat
Yeah.
like story. And
How does it feel when you look back at a company that still exists that you had a part of, but now you're not part of it? What does it feel like for you when you see that?
see, I think for all of us who went through this experience, it was a great reward that we made it. Because I mean, it is, as said, we went through very difficult times, and everyone who ever did a startup in his life, I mean, there are a few really super successful startups who just work from the very beginning, but the vast majority
Yeah.
fight, right, and need
Pivot
time and
and
need funding and pivot and founders clashing and investor clashing and all of that. So, and with Gate 5, we went through all the Gartner hype cycle, which actually brought us to the valley of disillusion, and there was no market anymore, and there was no money anymore, and so on and so forth. And yeah, and then we ended up with selling it, which was a great success. And all of us continued to work for Nokia with a lot of passion, because Nokia was a very good company and a great company at the time.
did they have
And
offices in Berlin? Were you
so
still in Berlin then?
uh, they bought our company. We're at the time we're 75 people, and now there are, I think, around 1,000 people in
Yeah.
Berlin for here, which then became Nokia, right? But I remember, I'm not 100% sure if the story is true, but I think Finnair, the Finnish airline, introduced a second daily flight to
Right.
Berlin after we got acquired, because yeah, there were so many people from Finland going every day
Yeah.
to
That's
Berlin, or
great.
every week. Yeah.
And then, so
Yeah.
you had a good time working at Nokia. At what point did you realize that, okay, I've had a good time, but it's time to do something else?
Oh, I can tell you this precisely. I don't know the date exactly or the time of the day, but that was, I mentioned before, I thought I'm a corporate guy, and somehow I
Right.
figured then out that I'm not. And everyone who's working in a corporate structure knows that a part of corporates is a constant
Okay.
reorganization type of stream, right? So there are consultants, there are internal reasons for, but a big company is constantly in flux, in flow. And I think it was the fifth or the sixth reorganization I went through in 3 years. And they usually all worked the same, right? There was a new direction, a new strategy. So teams need to be cut newly, and new responsibilities, new leaders from inside, from outside, and so on. And I had worked intensively for almost a year on a new project with a rather big team, 50, 60 people, developers, developer team in Romania and in Singapore, local sales team in the
Yeah.
US and in Berlin. So corporate life, right? And then there was the reorg, and I had to recut my team. There was this one morning where I had this PowerPoint with all my org chart, and part of the team actually was moved back to that organization, another. And then there was one
Right.
bubble open, which was me. So I had moved everyone to somewhere, and which was good because I mean that was my responsibility and it made a lot of sense. But then I looked on that slide that was after 3 years after the acquisition, after the exit, and I said, okay, if this is the case now, so there's no legacy. I mean, you cleaned your table up, everything is done, and maybe it's a good time to move on. And I think it was a good time.
And then what did you do after you left? Did you have a plan going out, or did you think, oh,
Oh, the plan was, yeah. The plan was, and that was my promise to my wife, because I mean, we had a quite intense 9 years on that, right? Barely took more than a week, 10
wow,
days off consecutively. I mean, of course, a bit more in days, of course, but not consecutively. So the plan was actually really to step back and take a, I don't know, 5, 6 months off and really plan the
yeah,
next step. And that actually worked almost 3 weeks, I
oh
think.
dear,
And then I was at a dinner with the founder of a startup in Berlin, which I originally joined as an
okay,
angel investor. So I joined the first seed investment round as an angel investor. It was not a huge ticket; it was a smaller ticket, but I was on the board of that company, and in that dinner we we got somehow into a discussion with the founder, and he said, "What does it mean that you stop now to work for Nokia? Does it mean are you available?" And I said, "Theoretically, yes. I have no plans, etc." And then he said, "Okay, what do you think if you join our company? I mean, we're working together, we like each other, we have the same thinking, same background." And I said, okay, but what do you think should the role be? Because of course, I mean, my next step also should be a step. He said, you can have my role. You can
good,
become
right,
CEO because then I have more time to focus on product development and other things. And I said, are you serious? And he said, yeah, I'm serious. I'm not married to that role. So, and that was a little bit too tempting. And then I think 4 weeks later,
yeah,
we're back in the startup, back on the road, smelling the dust. So
a
that
few
was no corporate
few
travel
flowers for your
anymore.
wife, some
No,
dinners, and back in the startup office.
exactly. Yeah. It was then another 7 years later. No, another 4 years later until we sold that company, and then I really took off
Cool.
six
And
months.
so that was that company, Opeo. Yeah, and
That was a
can you
pair.
tell us a little bit about what Opeo did? And because that shifted as well, didn't it? From I think from starting the tech.
Yeah, yeah, but oh yeah, of course. I mean, it originally started out as a consumer streaming service. I mean, that was back in 2008 when I invested into Alpeo, and that was the time of Spotify and
Yeah,
SoundCloud, etc., to show up on the stage. And Alpeo was way smaller. I mean, not at the beginning. Every startup is small at the beginning, but it was not this 200
yeah,
million funding or whatever these other companies had. And it was a consumer streaming service for internet radio, and what internet radio means, or what we know, personal radio. And so Apeo was using a technology from the Fraunhofer Institute to identify your music taste. It's a foundation of every music recommendation engine, or many recommendation engines you know today. And based on that, they played a consecutive stream that more and more was
Right.
learning your music taste. So that was the idea. And what was really smart in Alpeo, that was why I originally invested, is that different to any other streaming service at the time, it was built around a very strong API because the founder at the time had foreseen that many connected devices will be your interface, but not
Okay. Yeah.
just the PC, right? So it's not just a website. It will be the smartphone, the TV, the car, maybe your fridge. And for that you need a very strong,
Yeah.
well-defined API, and that made it different. But of course, if you build a consumer proposition, you need a lot of money to build reach and marketing, etc. around. And we were, I think, better in technology than really in marketing
Yeah.
and building reach. So we were chosen by BMW for their first integrated streaming solution, by Audi and so on. And then we ended up again in automotive. So Nokia at the end was a navigation proposition. Alpeo was a streaming proposition, but both, of course, were very much focusing on automotive, which then eventually also is the reason why I, I say today I'm 22 years in tech startups, but 15, 16 of them in the automotive mobility environment.
Yeah. And do you think that was quite an interesting contrast where you've got, you're working on a day-to-day basis with the startup world, but then you're interfacing with this really well-structured corporate entities of the motor
Yeah, I mean,
industry?
I think it's a little bit both. That I think I think it's in Blues Brothers, right, where they say, hey, we can both Western and country.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I can do a little bit Western and country.
Right.
I can corporate to a certain extent. So I understand what politics means, what hierarchy means, how you move decision forward, etc. And I can start up by heart,
Yeah.
and that actually brought me sometimes into this on and off
Yeah.
type of role.
And which is country and which is Western, do you think?
What do you think?
Yeah, corporate country. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Startup
yeah, yeah.
Western. Startup's definitely Western. Wild Western.
Wild Western. Yeah.
So, was it at that point when you were working in Hong Kong? At what point did you go to Hong Kong?
Um, I mean, that was with Gate
Oh,
5, we
was that Gate
developed
5,
this
right? Yeah.
navigation. I went to Hong Kong for good with Nokia. That was
Right.
literally 5 days after we sold the company, or 10 days. But it was already planned for Gate 5. So, and the background was we developed this navigation
Yeah.
software, and in the 2005-6 years, these TomTom type of navigation system became very
Yeah.
popular. I mean, you could buy it from TomTom, but you also could buy it from whatever your local tech market, right? Media Markt or Target or whatsoever. And these white label or third-party type of hardware solutions were all developed in Asia, mainly out of Taiwan, and then manufactured in China or in Korea and manufactured in China, etc. So I spent a lot of time there to sell our
Okay.
software. And I spent so much time because this market exploded so massively because everyone wanted to have a navigation system, right? That at one point of time, my wife and I decided just to
Right.
move
Yeah.
there because I just spent too much time on the plane. And if there was a pitching event with a new manufacturer in Taiwan, it was for me always a one-day travel, right? 2 hours to London, then 12 hours Cathay Pacific over to Hong Kong, another 2 hours to Taipei. And by living in Hong Kong, it was just a 2 hours flight to Taipei in the morning. So
Did you ever? Me and Jamie were probably in Hong Kong at the same time you were. We went to Hong Kong for a holiday. Um,
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah,
great times.
probably. Yeah. But it's just a 7 million people
Yeah.
city, so maybe we bumped into each other.
And what was that? Was that an exciting time in your life? Did you enjoy living in Hong Kong?
Don't get me started on that, right? I mean, I probably would cry for so beautiful
Right.
memories. No, it was a great time. It was a great time. I mean, it was. Hong Kong today is a different city than it used to be, as we all know. But when we were there, it has this beautiful positioning in Asia. So from Hong Kong, you are everywhere in less
Right.
than 3 hours. I mean, Australia is another 10 hours, right? Australia is so far away, you would not believe that there's 10 hours flight from Hong Kong. But you're, I don't know, 3 hours to Bali, you're in 2 hours in Thailand, you go down to Vietnam, and so on. So we love Asia, Southeast Asia a lot. The food, the people, the culture, the weather. So that was great, but also
Yeah.
living in Hong Kong was very nice. We lived on one of the outlying islands, so I
Oh,
took the
nice.
ferry in the morning to the office. Really nice. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Good
Sounds
time.
good. So then, Aupeo, you then got acquired again. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, by another very big corporate, Panasonic. And as I told before, Alpeo was focusing on
yeah.
music streaming, and then it turned out that some channels we just had overestimated. We bet a lot on connected TVs. We thought connected
Yeah.
TVs will explode. Everyone will listening to music on connected TVs, and today it's a little bit, but it never turned into a really
I remember sometimes
other
it's like
than
one of those
watching.
cycles, isn't it? You go to a trade fair for tech, and then one year it's all connected TVs,
Yes,
and yeah,
yes, yes, yes. And I mean, at the time there were very little video streaming portals. There was no Netflix streaming or Prime Video. So what was the content? And we bet on music or on music streaming, and it didn't really convert. But in automotive, it was that the automotive guys with 2011-12 all were looking into
yeah,
connected services. Um, and the radio concept is a learned concept for radio for car radio. So it was very natural that they all approached us or reacted so positively to our approach. And then complex story. I met someone, and there was a process ongoing, and then we met in Istanbul and back in Berlin, etc. Yeah, we met a team in Panasonic Automotive. One part of Panasonic is an automotive supply or tier one division, and
yeah. It's crazy to think how much Panasonic does, doesn't it? You don't immediately think of them as being like a car company,
it's
but
unbelievable. I mean, I then worked for almost 3 years for Panasonic, and I mean, they do everything. They're world market leaders in in-flight entertainment systems. So uh, I think 89, 91% of the cases, if you're sitting in front of a screen in a plane in the world, you're watching on a Panasonic screen, a Panasonic licensed video, because they also have all the Hollywood streaming rights and so on. Insane. They do Wi-Fi in planes, but they also
right,
do lady shaves and toasters, right?
yeah,
And but they also do automotive. So, and then it happened through that story that I just touched on. It happened that the North American entity bought our company.
yeah.
So I turned out to have American parents and Japanese grandparents, which was an interesting experience.
And so was that because you were spending time in Japan, or with the
The
grandparents?
uh, yes, I mean, of course, my direct report line was into Detroit,
Yeah.
Farmington Hills, Detroit. But the headquarters of this subdivision of Panasonic was in Yokohama.
Right.
So, and that was then why I spent a lot of time on the plane between Berlin, Detroit, and Berlin and Yokohama.
Watching Panasonic videos. And then
So easy.
and then you again at some point you decided it was time to leave Panasonic.
Exactly, and that is a little bit related to what I mentioned before, and that I have a very high respect and also I think it's a great talent if you understand to maneuver inside a big corporation,
Yeah.
because it is a talent to understand how the structures work, how you move projects inside a big structure where everyone somehow has the feeling to have an influence and have a role and have a power and so on. And once you pushed it through, then the dimension you can achieve is huge,
Yeah.
way bigger than with a startup. A startup usually only gets this, very few startups get this dimension, or you get the dimension after you got acquired, which happened to us with the navigation company.
Yeah.
When Nokia acquired us and said, okay, we will put you on 80 million phones next year, that's what you call scale,
Yeah.
right? And if you would have got just £1 per installation, great. But now you were Nokia, so they didn't get the pound per installation. So that's why they did the acquisition, by the way, because they also understood that calculation. Anyway, so and that's sometimes the case that this works for a while, and then you feel that you have to go back. And then I left in end of 2015. I left Panasonic.
And then you said you took another 6 months out before you got back into things.
Yeah.
And then were you one of the founders of Autolabs, or did you join when someone else had?
No. Autolabs I founded in 2016 in May.
Yeah.
And then we started to work with a team with Daniel, who's the co-founder, who joined, and we worked with Daniel already in Aupeo.
Yeah.
So this is how this then started. Yeah.
The startup family going away and then coming back together at some point.
Very much. No. It was really. I had this idea to build a voice assistant, a retrofit voice assistant for cars, and discussed it with a lot of people, and had a lunch with Daniel, because I knew that this will have a very strong marketing component, and he used to be. I mean, he's still, but he's also now very much in product. So we had this lunch, and I just told him the story and wanted his feedback, because I knew that he was in a well-paid, good job. And he said, my company is just deciding to move the office from here somewhere else, which is 600 kilometers south from Berlin, and I don't really feel to move there.
Right.
I said, that's a good coincidence. How you feel to come back into an uncertain startup world, badly paid, unsafe, a lot of work, no full vacation, and a lot of fun? And he said, sounds like a plan.
Sounds a lot like the conversation you had earlier, but the other way around, at an earlier stage in your career.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
So
Very true.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what Autolabs does and what it's doing and how it's moving forward?
So fundamentally, we built voice assistants for professional drivers.
Yeah.
What is a professional driver? Professional driver is a fleet driver, is a lorry driver, is a van driver who has a job to do while driving a vehicle.
Yeah.
And that is a situation where a voice assistant is extremely helpful, because there's a high level of distraction by visual information. There's a lot of information that through voice and according feature set can be communicated way smoother and better and clearer than having it on a display on a phone. That's what we do today, but we even go a level deeper our days and focus not only on professional drivers, but what we call mobile
Hmm.
workers. Fundamentally, people who are out on the road, and those are also delivery people for food, for grocery, uh, but also, I mean, there are hundreds of people every day on the road in London, in
Yeah.
Berlin, in Helsinki, in Stockholm, resorting, the sharing fleets, and so on. All of these people have one in common. They are on the move.
Hmm.
So they don't have a beautiful screen like you and us, you and me at the moment in front of you. You also don't have a desk where you can place a piece of paper and just reading while I'm talking with you, and a little bit cheating on you while checking my emails and doing a podcast
Yeah.
with you, right? So that's not possible when you're either riding a truck, a bicycle, if you're walking in a city, because you need to focus on the road, on the street, and at the same time, you also have all that information that you need to for your delivery,
Yeah.
right? Next delivery is with Bob, and Bob has he's a premium customer, so be nice. He's the one who's always ordering for £30 every day, so be very nice to him. And by the way, Bob gave you permission to just place the delivery with his
Right.
neighbor, right? So all that information is essential, and the voice assistant actually can make that aware, can reduce error rates, can increase service quality, and that's what we do.
That sounds great. And then, so it's really bringing together all of the elements of the location base. So it's kind of, it's that extension of like, it's almost getting a smarter map, isn't it? You created your
Yeah,
map, and then your map
yeah,
came
yeah.
onto your phone, and then
Absolutely,
now you've
absolutely. Mapping, and I mean, we naturally have a strategic alliance with Here Technologies, which used to be Nokia Maps, which used to
that's
be
a
Get
good
Five. So
coincidence.
the story,
Oh,
it's not a coincidence. But no, no, you're absolutely perfectly right. So that's also what we sometimes like to call it. It's like the hyperlocal database that we're creating with the interfaces. And of course, a voice assistant is extremely helpful if it tells you something when you need it. So a contextual type of co-driver, right? Like a
yeah.
rally co-driver. On the other side, a voice assistant has the beauty that you can talk to him, and information that usually are very difficult to digitalize, but that you want to have in your feedback channel, like access details for
Yeah.
a barrier, so a pin code for door, a gate, or a barrier. Someone moved, you cannot find the address. The address is not marked or whatsoever, right? All of that information are extremely important to make the job
Yeah.
smooth and profitable and working. And that's what we can do with
Yes.
our tools.
Great. And what are you currently, what are your thoughts on sort of like autonomous driving going forward? Do you think that's going to happen? Do you think it'll have a positive or negative impact on what you're doing?
So I think what we are doing is not really affected by it, a part of a possibility that if there is only autonomous delivery on the last mile, you don't need a
Yeah.
voice assistant. That is true. You still would need a voice assistant for many other things, as we know that. I mean, my favorite story for that is that Enterprise, the USS Enterprise, this beautiful starship
Yeah.
that we all
Oh
know,
yeah.
right? Flying completely autonomously, right, in on warp 4 speed, and still people using voice interfaces and voice assistants to talk to the ship. Now, say, hey computer, where's
Yeah.
Captain Kirk? And so voice assistant will continue even in an autonomous driving world. But the truth is, and I tell you that, Bob, I tell you that,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
between you and I, no one is listening here. Yeah, it will take a long time before this will be
Right.
a reality, right? And and that is I gave a speech back in 2016-17 on a mobility conference, and I was asking the question and answer part. When do you expect autonomous driving fleets arriving on the streets,
Yeah.
whatever, the US, Europe, etc.? So in a pilot or in a restricted
Yeah.
environment very soon. But as a mass market phenomenon, as a mass market business,
Yeah.
2030 and later. So, and that was 4 years ago, and people somehow, not really, but it was a little bit that they were booing at me and said, "Oh no, you're so negative. And see what Uber is doing, see what Waymo is doing, see what Tesla is doing, etc." And now we have 2021, not too far away from 2022, which actually was the year I think Uber said that it will have in 25
Right.
cities autonomous driving fleets. And I can tell you it's not going to happen, and it will take a long time. So much about autonomous driving. I think it's necessary, it will
Yeah.
happen, but it will take longer.
Well, thanks for letting us know. I'll be sure not to tell anyone else.
No, absolutely. And that was my free hint today.
Thanks. So just last question for this section is just, are you excited about what's coming up in your career? Are you excited about the future? How do you see things shaping up in this post-COVID world?
Uh, Unfortunately, we are not yet in the post-COVID world.
Right.
I mean, being vaccinated and only can recommend everyone to do the same. It feels definitely lighter and easier than the past 18 months, no doubt. I'm generally very positive about the future, and I
Yeah.
think that technology will play a significant role into it. Some things take way longer than we like to have. I can tell
Yeah.
you the development of voice assistants is also not really a sprint. It's more a long distance type of run, maybe not a marathon, but should be 5,000 meters
Yeah.
type of run, 10,000. And but no, I'm positive. I mean, there are definitely quite significant challenges that we have to overcome. But I think generations before us had different but similar challenges. Uh, like wars, like food supply, and so on, and of course the climate change and the challenges around that has a very high burden on our generation and the generations to come. But I think mankind, if it sometimes does not even look like, will make a smart decision and will find a way to solve that.
Yeah. That's always what you've got to keep working towards, isn't it? Tech, hopefully, and the humans and tech working together can solve all the problems that are thrown at us, even if we create those problems for ourselves.
Correct. Correct.
Brilliant. So thanks for that. We'd like to now just ask you a few of our Concise Conversation first 8 questions. I hope you'd be all right with that. Just a bit of fun. Hopefully not as deep as what we've just been chatting about. So first question that I've got for you is, what was your first computer?
Commodore C64.
Oh, brilliant. Commodore 64. So that was one of my first computers as well. What was your favourite game on it? Do you remember?
That's the problem because I cannot remember. I sold it after 3 months because I figured out I'm not one of these computer guys. I really prefer to play outside. I mean, I think I was 12 or 13, playing outside rather than sitting inside playing a game.
So the entrepreneurial instinct kicked in early days. It's like, you know what?
Early day, yeah, exactly. The challenges are outside there and in here, which today is, I need to admit, is a disadvantage in that respect that I should know coding better,
Yeah.
and but I missed that part. Yeah.
Well, you've got good development teams to do all that for you at the moment. So you need.
That's true.
you need
That's
it.
true. That's true.
So
Yeah.
next question is, what's currently your favourite piece of software or application that you use
that I'm using on my smartphone. I think it's still mapping
All right.
and and probably WhatsApp.
Yeah.
WhatsApp, Slack.
You get a bit complacent, don't you, about mapping, but it is still amazing. We should spend more time when you look at your map and go like, actually, this is amazing, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I know what the challenges are behind, but no, that's not the reason. But I mean, seriously, if I would do a pie chart, how much of your digital time you're using with what program or software would be a lot with
Yeah.
mapping.
So next question is like, what's your best tech purchase of the last 12 months?
Oh, it's a Sonos Move.
All
Sonos
right.
Move, phenomenal. It's a speaker, as
Oh,
you
I don't
know,
know that
Wi-Fi
one. I
speaker.
don't know that one. Um,
Yeah, it's a pretty new one. I think it's now about a year on the market, or maybe
oh
two
man, I've
years,
missed it.
and it's mobile. So I mean, actually, you can put it everywhere, and outside of your Wi-Fi, it's using Bluetooth inside your Wi-Fi. It's using the Wi-Fi, and it's so easy. You take it with you to the bath when you're showering. You take it to the terrace, and
All right.
it's easy.
I'll have to
So
get one.
very, very, very nice sound quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
Cool.
You should.
Next question. This one should be quite interesting for you. If you had to spend 6 months abroad right now, not somewhere you've already lived, where would you go?
That is a good one. That's a good one. First, I mean, first thought coming to my life somewhere
Yeah.
Southeast Asia, for the reasons that I told you. Maybe
Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Yeah.
Um, I never lived in Taiwan. I spent a lot of time in Taiwan. I like Taiwan people a lot, and could be, yeah,
Taiwan.
Taiwan.
Yeah. I can see that. Um, okay. This is now on the negative side of tech. If there was an item of technology that you could put into room 202, which is the Concise Conversations version of room 101, and get rid of it forever, what would you put in room 202?
In room 202, which piece of technology I would put into? I know my wife would put my
Yeah.
smartphone into. So,
That.
I mean, I really think I'm not too addicted, but she says I'm very addicted. And for myself, no, it's nothing really that I would ban into there. I mean, I usually don't buy tech that I
Yeah.
don't need or don't want. And luckily, because I'm not in this structure, no one is forcing me to use tech that I don't
Yeah.
want to. Right?
And do you think the social media as sort of use of social media has been kind of overall a positive or a negative to people's?
It's exact
Right.
50-50 thing. I think a lot what we see here our days in terms of communication and global movements, etc., from politics and the Arabic Spring movement, even if it didn't really work out, etc. Uh, for me, catching up with old
Yeah.
schoolmates and so on, social media is
Yeah.
fantastic, right? On the other side, it is the reason for a lot of bad things that
Yeah.
we just seeing. It's not only this fake news type of thing. It is this hate speech. The and that's something personally it makes me extremely sad if you see how aggressive people, even people you know and you respect, um, become on
Yeah.
social media, right? So someone is saying something, claiming something, quoting something, and it's immediate. It's I mean it's pushing back on a niveau and level that is really devastating, right? And that's something. Social media is a very
Yeah.
dangerous thing, very dangerous thing.
But like it's just a tool, I guess, isn't it? So like all tools, they can be dangerous or they can be used positively and
No, yeah,
constructively.
of course. I mean, see, I mean, atomic bomb per se is nothing bad. I mean, it's physics and a little bit chemistry, and so it's the
Yeah,
guy pushing the
yeah.
button, right?
That's a good segue into our final question, which we find really important. We think really gets to the heart of someone. What's your favorite keyboard shortcut?
It's it's still
Yes,
copy
it's a
paste.
classic. It's a classic.
Control C and V. That's or X. I mean, deleting also. But it's I think again, do a pie chart, which shortcut I'm using how often. One shortcut, maybe that's the other way around, that is somehow super dangerous for me, is this
Oh,
Shift Enter. Shift Enter as a shortcut. If you in LinkedIn, it
right.
sends out a message. If you're in Slack, it does a line break, um, and you can go from service to service. And if you think it's a line break and you do it and it's a send out, that's not
Yeah,
good.
you need to have like a real.
I think, I really believe that Shift Enter needs a standardized function, right? I mean, it's like a
Yeah,
Control C that works by my understanding, on a Mac in the same way like on a Windows machine. But Shift Enter works differently on Slack than on
it's like the
LinkedIn. It's like
nuclear bomb
dangerous.
of the keyboard shortcuts. It needs.
Yeah, but more this. Oh, I mistakenly started the Third World War by just Shift Enter. I just wanted
Exactly,
to
and
do
then
a
I
line
sent
break.
it to
Well,
everyone on
exactly.
LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and it's a nightmare. Brilliant. That was I really enjoyed speaking to you today, Holger. Thanks for your time. I hope you thought it was all right. And then hope to see you again soon. And as we've said,
Absolutely.
we're based in London. We run a pub, and if ever you're in London, make sure you come in and have a drink with us.
What was it?
Piccadilly
Piccadilly, right?
Circus, yeah, the Queen's Head.
I'll come around. I'll come
Brilliant.
around.
Okay then. Thanks a lot, Holger. We'll
Bob,
speak to you
bye
soon.
bye. Thank you.